All right, peeps, so I recognize you may not be able to see me so well, but this just came up in conversation. I was chatting with a friend of mine as I was leaving the gym, and we're just sort of talking about stuff. Oh, Erin Zamorio, don't forget to do the like, follow, send me stuff, etc. And it's come up a few times lately. There's this buzz in the world about traditional values, traditional family values, etc., etc. We need to go back to the time when family meant something, blah, 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 when we had these great families and these great family values. And I'm like, I'm a child of the 80s, and my job has been people my whole life. Come from a family of deep inquiry, and a family that on my father's side, the Plastic side, has a lot of social values and is very, very, very family orientated. Like, I remember going to Christmases in Blenheim with my entire extended family. I grew up around my cousins till I was about, I'm trying to think how old I was when we left for Nelson. So I was about 10. I was around my cousins a lot, particularly before my parents got divorced. And I feel that I really did have the benefit of hanging out with cousins that were like brothers and sisters. And I still feel a sense of nostalgia when I meet with them, and a sense of connection when I meet with them. And I have other cousins as well that I didn't get to spend as much time with, and yet we still have this connection, and it's an amazing thing to have. And I think something that we all come together and appreciate, especially the older lot of cousins, because there's now a younger lot and another younger lot and third cousins and all that sort of stuff, and we've become quite the prolific family. You know, something my cousin Amelia and I were talking about at the last 70th we were at was how lucky we are to be part of such an unusual family that has had this connection like this, because it's not as common, and certainly not in a New Zealand culture, it's not as common to have such a connection with your extended family as we have. And it was something our grandmother created, and it was something that the brother and sister connection within our fathers, aunts, uncles, etc., it was bred into them, it was conditioned into them, and it has been a really beautiful experience. At the same time, I listened to something the other day one of my clients forwarded to me about tradition that had a thread of traditional family values in it, and it gives me a bit of pause, because I come from my immediate family struggled with money. There was a bit of violence in there. There was certainly some dodgy stuff. Not everybody was always around. I feel I had great parents, you know. I feel I had a great life growing up. And yet, I've had some reflections back when doing things like talk therapy that were really enlightening as to what my inner child was actually perceiving versus what my rose-tinted glasses had decided my childhood was. And see, the thing about this traditional family value thing is I want to know what traditional family construct ever existed in the idyllic sense that people seem to go on about it. So what I'm essentially saying there is, when did this magical family reality really exist? Like, if you go back to the 1950s, women were essentially owned. There were many women living in environments where they were being raped by their husbands, they were being beaten by their husbands, they had to deal with alcoholics all the time, where if they stepped outside of the construct of what was considered societally acceptable, they were rejected. And I'm just going back to the 50s here, right? So, and those were the women who raised our mothers and fathers, if you're my age, you know. So it didn't exist then. The idea of it existed. The perpetuation of it existed. And I would suggest to you all that that is conditioning of the last 400 years of socialism. This familial handshake. I will give you a roof over your head if you behave yourself, right? If you play ball and you integrate into the family, I will help you survive. And it was part of kind of a survival crossover. the truth is, this idyllic family that everybody all of a sudden wants to go back to. And then what was interesting was the thing I listened to the other day was talking about the breakdown in the relationship he had with his father, and this guy talking was about 60, and actually how they held space for each other in the end, how eventually his father wised up to what a shitty father he had been, and said what a great father he thought his son was. And his son, in the presence of moment, had the intelligence to go, if I'm any good as a father, it's actually because of what I learned from you. And so I'm grateful for that, even if it was shit for me, essentially. And I think that's a beautiful thing. And the guy was kind of saying, I held space for him and he held space for me. I'm like, yeah, on his deathbed, and most of your life, you didn't think like that. It wasn't until he acknowledged you that you were able to hold space for him. Some people never get that. Some people's alcoholic, abusive family members die on the spot of a heart attack and they never clean anything up. And that's mostly the good scenario for some people. That's the crazy thing here. It's like, it's the good scenario. So I'm just a little bit curious. Where did everybody get this idyllic family reality from? And then it occurred to me. TV. Presidents portraying the perfect family. The Partridges and the Brady Bunch and what was that one I used to watch? Happy Days, where everyone relates well and people make mistakes and they hold space for each other and no one gets beaten up for it and no one gets sexually assaulted by their father or their uncle or their whatever it is. No one feels abandoned by their mother who was just stressed out when she had 3 kids to deal with and dad was an absentee workaholic. When? I ask you all, and please correct me if I am wrong, I would love someone to point out that there is actually a point in our history where traditional family values really existed, really were a thing. Because there are so many people talking about the degradation of family values and degradation of the family in this moment. And I get that there's something in that. I do get that. But when they talk about the family and the degradation of it, they talk about it as if it once existed well. And I'm sorry, but in my lifetime, I don't remember it. And I don't think it got worse in my lifetime. As in, I don't think before my lifetime it was better. I know what my mother's relationship was with her father and her mother. Her and I have talked about it. Actually, I kind of feel like, I guess in some ways, I got some of the good qualities of family, but I can tell you right now, it was not perfect, and it is not something that I think we should be aspiring to, and not because I don't respect and deeply love and deeply appreciate the privilege I had with my family, but because it was by no means perfect, and I think I did well out of most of my peers. So tell me, people, where are you getting this idea of traditional family? In the 80s, women in this country were raging against their drunk husbands because they were all driving home drunk after the pub and not helping them that much. I know that my grandfather was apparently like a workaholic and liked his tipple a little bit. So my grandmother did everything to do with the immediate family stuff. I'm like, where is this traditional family value? And yeah, I'm totally on a rant because people keep going on about it and people keep hugging into it. And I have to say, it's a lot of men that I'm noticing, and maybe I'm wrong there. There are trad wives I know that talk about traditional values and are into the traditional thing. And I see why. I'm just curious as to when it ever really worked. I'm like, are we reinventing the wheel here? Or are we hugging into a wheel that was actually a rectangle that never rolled anywhere and never really did anything well? I don't know. I think that you've all been hoodwinked by 400 years of conditioning and you believe something existed that never ever did. It was just a beautiful idea that the Brady Bunch perpetuated as idyllic and wonderful and so many things. And I think very, very, very few people would ever say that it existed. And one of the reasons it doesn't is because the first part of your life is meant to be trial by fire. That's what it is to live. And so I don't think there was ever a family that got it right and didn't traumatize their children. I just don't think that that's the case. And I don't think that trying to hug into it as if there was something that ever existed that was perfect is at all intelligent. I think as we move forward, what we need to realize is that the familial handshake, the family compromise that has existed for 400 years, you behave and I will put a roof over your head, that very request requires you to not be an individual, to not be yourself, to be part of the family at the expense of who you are. I think that broken up because, there it goes. I think that idea has to die in a fire, because that is the very idea that has stopped free thinking in and of itself. Because as soon as you condition into a family, you stop using your differentiated, individualized opinion, and you start using something that's been conditioned by your survival instincts. Because a child needs its family to survive. And I think we need to start raising children to be so individual that they don't care what you think for their survival, because they know that they will be okay anyway. When you can raise your kids like that, to be radical, to be wild, to be self-attuned, the world's going to be a fucking interesting place. But, people are terrified of that, because you've been told your children don't have their own intuition for some reason, that they don't have their own way of navigating the world. It's a very different thing to encourage a child not to stick a fork in a socket by distracting them with something else. It's quite another to tell them that their authority is wrong in a decision-making process, and to tell them that the way they should do something is that they should be chased because it makes them more valuable. They should dress a certain way because it makes them more valuable. A classic my stepfather told me, and for my benefit, though not a good one, though I do deeply appreciate my stepfather, was never say no to a boss. Do you know what? We should be saying no a lot more. A lot more. There have been a lot of things I have let slide in my life because I was taught some really interesting things, because that is the familial cross of planning. I go into the office and I play ball. And we came up with a phrase, pushback. That person's pushing back. That person's having an opinion. And they're saying this is a shit way to do something. My God, I've gotten so much resistance in the workplaces I've been in because I pushed back. Because I am very individual, and I was raised somewhat individually, and as a result, I never understood why I couldn't just speak my mind. Something that my Pelagic family did give me was all the kids got a voice from very young, and it makes us quite interesting to have dinner with. Much love to my Pelagic family. Whilst I don't believe that this traditional family idyllic reality ever existed, I will say this. I do deeply appreciate the traditions that my Pelagic family brought forward, but I also was there and heard the rest of it. And I witnessed other things as well. And I heard about their childhoods, and and it was not this idyllic thing that doesn't need to change, We don't need to go back. We need to go forward. And that doesn't mean we don't appreciate where we've come from. That would be silly, right? That makes no sense. We appreciate where we come from because this is a refining experiment. This is trial by fire. In the process of differentiation and individualization, as we go forward into the next 400 years of individualization, there is going to be a burning down of the construct of family as we have known it. And there will be a rebuilding. Do you want to be part of holding on to something that is dead? You know, the Buddhists have a saying, only the dead walk the old path. Or do you want to build something new? Do you want to understand what you're holding on to as a conditioned, idyllic fantasy that never existed, but that maybe something from it can be gleaned by having a look at how it conditioned us and what we actually managed to achieve, and then going, okay, well, how do we step forward with a little bit more intelligence? And I can tell you right now, you will have no choice but to embrace the individual and to stop sacrificing them and their opinions for the sake of your family unit. Please comment, do all the things, send me private messages. This was a hell of a rant. It just keeps coming up. And I look forward to seeing you all again.